Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. No mai, haere mai, and greetings all. My name is Cheryl Adamson, and I am the General Manager of the Parnell Business Association. We'd like to welcome you to today's episode of Parnell Eco Bites, short and sharp topical conversations in the eco space, 8 to 10 questions, one presenter, and we release this monthly. It's always a pleasure to interview an author, so we're really interested to hear from Emily King today. One of the things we take pride in as Kiwis is the high standard of much of our food production and our outstanding primary exports. But Emily challenges this as only part of the story and has commented in the media post the floods and other climate events on the impact of food systems globally, asking us to consider the whole system from growing through manufacturing to consumption. I really look forward to hearing more from Emily, so would now like to hand over to Josephine Rudkin-Binks, who's a board member of the Parnell Business Association and our sustainability champion, to interview Emily. Over to you, Joey.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Emily to you today, founder of Spira. A thought leader in food systems and sustainability, Emily has studied and worked on food systems for over a decade, a journey that's taken her around the world. She founded Spira in 2017 and was named one of the Food Tank's top 20 global food leaders under 40 for her work. She's worked across the country to help cities, businesses, and communities improve their food systems. This year, Emily published her first book, Re-Food, which advocates for a food systems approach to Aotearoa New Zealand's troubled food networks, one that takes into account the full paths and processes from the farm to the family table. So, kia ora, Emily. Tell us a bit about Spira and particularly your role.
Kia ora, Josephine, and thank you to your business association for having me here today. It's a pleasure to speak to you. Yes, as you mentioned, I run Spira. It's a food systems and sustainability organisation. So I run trainings and events and also give advice on food systems change across New Zealand. And yeah, Spira I set up in 2017, so I've been doing this for a while. And prior to that, I've worked in food systems change across New Zealand and the world. So it's building on, quite a bit of work now.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. And Spira, I shall remember that. So your new book that you launched, Re-Food, it advocates for a food systems approach. But can you sort of explain what that means? Oh, awesome. Good to see the cover there as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I take a food systems approach, which looks at the full food system from the environment through to the farmers and growers, the food manufacturers and producers, our retailers and sellers, and then right through to people getting food or not getting access to food. And of course, along the way in that sort of journey, there's also food waste that happens. And there's also a lot of transportation and logistics nationally and internationally because we're connected to a global food system. So it's quite a big system. And so when I take a food systems approach, I'm looking at that full cycle, and it's getting people to expand their thinking of the parts of the food system that they might be familiar with or work in and think about the whole cycle. And of course, on top of the practical side of the food chain, we also have economics, trade, politics, culture, and health. And so they all weave in there to make for quite an interesting system to work within.
Oh, fascinating. And kind of in terms of sustainability and probably food systems, but sort of what keeps you awake at night? What's the big issue for you?
Yeah, it keeps me awake that we have a food system that doesn't feed people, and climate change keeps me awake as well. Those are two really big things that impact our future. If we don't have people eating food, we don't have a thriving country and culture as a people, and if we don't address the impacts of climate change, then our future generations won't have all of the great things that we've been fortunate enough to enjoy. So those are probably the big two.
Right. And so what's on your agenda for this year?
Well, obviously I've launched ReFood partway through the year, middle of winter. So a couple of months in, that's going really well. And we're seeing some good ripple effects of that, some conversations happening. And yeah, I hope that that continues. And then I constantly work in food systems change. So obviously the book is a big deal this year, but my real work continues on World Food Day, which is the 16th of October. I'm launching our online training course, Food Foundations, and that will be a practical course for people to take part in. And so that's probably the next big thing on the Spira agenda coming up this spring. Yeah.
Excellent. And is that Spira course aimed at sort of individuals or businesses or both?
Yeah, I work with professionals and businesses and organizations. So it's a business to business approach. And my trainings usually focus on helping people solve crunchy challenges in the food system and help them have a foundation and also a framework to address those problems. It's quite a connected and collaborative approach. So the trainings that I run connect people with other professionals across the food system, and not only do you learn from me, but also the other people and the challenges they're facing and the solutions they have. So yeah, that's the approach.
Excellent. And when you describe this sort of food systems approach, and a lot of it just makes good business sense. So sort of what do you think holds people back from action?
Yeah, so there's a lot of action that can be taken, and not everyone's going to take a food systems approach. It's just one way of thinking about the system and trying to understand it. In my work, I've seen the benefits of that because I've seen people have empathy for other parts of the system and join dots and connections and try and sew some of those somewhat broken parts back together. So that's why I advocate for it. But it is only one approach, I guess. There are others. But what we need to see, I think, is people just to understand I guess what the food system is, and with my work through my writing and also my advocacy, it's looking at giving the food system a voice so that it's not an abstract concept anymore. It becomes visible and we can talk about it. And then once we've got that momentum going around that understanding of what we're talking about, then we can start to see change. And otherwise it's a little bit jargony or abstract or distant. But what's powerful about food is that we all are connected to it, regardless of our backgrounds, what we work in, what we do. We're all connected somehow through food, and that's why it's such a powerful medium for change. You can bring people together around a meal and really create some interesting conversations. But also, that's just a metaphor, I guess, as well for the change that can happen when you have people really understanding the food system. So there's a lot of hope in there. And when I said earlier that climate change and feeding people keeps me up at night, I mean, I really meant my kids keep me up at night. No, I mean, when I said that, I was really meaning that we have this opportunity to address that, but we can be really hopeful because in both of those topics, particularly climate change, when I worked solely in that, there's a lot of doom and gloom, and it can be very overwhelming, and it can be quite negative in a way because it's such a big problem. Whereas with food, what we can do is actually break it down into really positive things. And ultimately, if you can get more meals to people, or you can improve the health of people's lives or the way things are grown in terms of the environment, water, soil and climate change and the like, then there are some really positive effects that can happen. And everybody can do that regardless of what they think about the bigger picture out there. So food has a really powerful it's a really powerful vehicle, for want of a better word, for change, I think.
Excellent. And do you see sectors like agriculture or food manufacturing actually have sort of sustainability goals and starting to approach things from a full food systems angle?
Yeah, definitely intentions there for sure. And I think that, in New Zealand, our agriculture sector does have that intention. I don't think we work with the food systems framing though, not yet. I think we're starting to get there. It's really the nascent stages of this kind of understanding. But there are, as I said earlier, other framings for that system. So it's just one way of framing it up. But we don't have a strong approach from a food systems angle, I would say, as a country yet.
Yet, okay, yeah, emphasis on the yet, and so that's what your book's obviously highlighting. So with an election looming and the government's releasing all their policies, have you seen any policies that might support food systems thinking?
Oh, that's actually a great question, because I've just run an analysis on all the political parties and their food system policies or lack thereof. So if people are interested, actually later this week, our newsletter goes out with a link to that analysis, and you can sign up at spira.nz. There's a prompt on the website to join the newsletter to get the full rundown. Yeah, I mean, I'm talking like there's a big analysis there. We don't have, as I said previously, an overarching food strategy or way of thinking about that as a country, and so that trickles into individual political parties' assessments of things. They tend to focus on, rural livelihoods or agriculture or health from a fixing the health system perspective, as opposed to potentially thinking about healthy foods or health environments and those sorts of things. So there are approaches in there from pretty much all of the main political parties, but they're piecemeal. There is one political party that has a food policy, the Green Party, I think it is, that actually has a food policy as part of their policy platform. The rest, you sort of have to piece them together. But in that document, I've linked to every single policy from every single party that touches the food system, so that people can make informed choices for their vote.
Oh, great. That sounds awesome. I'll definitely have a look at that. Thank you. And sort of, is there an organisation that you think's really leading in this space?
Aside from Spira.
Yes. Well, food manufacturer, or
I'd love to think about our food businesses, because I don't think they get enough airtime for all the great things they do. We have some really good, well-established, trusted brands in New Zealand, like Ceres Organics. That's a good one that's been around for a really long time, has a really strong supply chain, and takes a lot of effort thinking about its suppliers and where it procures its food from. And we have a lot of other great businesses. I mean, I can't list them all. But one thing I can suggest to people, though, consumers, is you can look for labeling and certifications around things to help inform your choices of these things. And looking behind it is a good idea to see what's going into the food and where things are procured from. I always advocate for supporting New Zealand farmers and growers, so that we can make sure that they receive livelihood from their own country and get the support they need. We have so many great farmers and growers in our country. It's something to be really proud of, as is the quality of food that we produce. I feel like I can't list I did say Ceres off the top of my head, but I don't feel like there's one that I can list. However, I do judge the Outstanding New Zealand Food Producer Awards, and so I should do a plug for this. You can look for the the award endorsement on some of your products. They've been assessed by judges for their provenance, their relationship to New Zealand food, their taste, their quality, and I also judge every single entry on their sustainability. So you can also find the sustainability winners from that, because there's some great stories. Like this year we had Parnell Pine Nuts, who are a fantastic business in Marlborough Sounds, growing pine nuts in New Zealand. Great quality product and great story there. So yeah, there's hundreds, and we should be super proud of that.
Awesome, great, thank you. Sort of finally, if there was one piece of advice that you could give a business, what would that be?
I think having empathy for other parts of the food system. So if we really want to make a change in how we do things, there's so much to be done and to be said for people really understanding other parts of the system. And I really think that once we hold that empathy in our mind when we're trying to talk to other people, we can create change. And I guess that's a bit of a soft tool and a soft piece of advice around it, but I think that it's going to take a lot of people from a lot of different organizations and backgrounds and agendas to come together to create change. And I think if we want to see that happen in a way that is for the best for our country in terms of healthy people and a healthy environment, then we need to hold the space for empathy so that we can understand other perspectives, learn from them, and create change together.
Excellent. No, great advice. And of course, buy the book, Refood. I'm assuming any good booksellers and on your website.
Thank you for the plug for the book. Yes, you can buy it from any good bookstore. You can order it in your library, which is also wonderful. And if they don't have it, you can ask them, because there's book distributors and they can get that in for you. But most of the good bookstores do. Or you can buy it from me directly off my website, spira.nz, and I will sign a copy and put it in the post for you myself. So that's
a Christmas present idea. So
yeah, thank you.
So thank you, Emily. That's been awesome. Excellent insights into a nation and global wide issues. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you for listening and for inviting me on.